When it comes to influence, persuasion, and certain forms of human communication, you're gonna sometimes deal with resistance. Why? Because influence and persuasion involves change. People naturally resist change, and so therefore people naturally resist influence and persuasion. And one of the ways that they do that is through questions, which sometimes turn into objections about what you're presenting to them. In today's video, I'm going to show you a very simple way to help overcome objections or answer these gap questions that people have that are stopping them from believing what you're saying or following through on what you're asking them to do. But I'm going to show you how to do it subtly and elegantly so that you're not in a combative situation with the other person. Hey guys, my name is Paul Macetta, and I'm a researcher in the field of human communication. So if you like learning about things like human communication, then go ahead and consider subscribing. And in the description of this video, there's going to be a link to my book, The Black Book of Hypnotic Language Patterns, where I'm going to share not only the pattern that I'm going to reveal in today's video, but I'm going to share 100 more just like it. So if that interests you, go ahead to the description of the video and click that link. So let's jump right in. The one I'm going to share with you today is actually number 7, and this is what I call the mind reading pattern. Now, when I first share that with people, they're like, what? What am I doing? I'm being a psychic, like I'm reading people's minds. And so, yes, you definitely are going to be reading their mind, but not like in the metaphysical, esoteric, psychic context of it. It's more about listening closely to what the other person is saying to you so that you can start to understand what questions they might have that are preventing them from saying yes to whatever you're asking them to do, or to forming the belief or opinion or outlook that you're hoping to instill in them, or ultimately just simply complying with what you are asking them to do. And so the more of these gap questions, so a gap question is a question that a person is going to have about the subject that you're presenting to them that is ultimately creating a gap between where they are and them saying yes to what you're presenting to them. So for example, if I was selling somebody this microphone and I was talking about all the benefits of this microphone, but this microphone is a XLR microphone, which means it can't be plugged into a computer. It has a special cable that has to be plugged into an audio interface, so it doesn't have a USB input or output on it, so it cannot be plugged into a computer. The trade-off is that the sound quality is generally better in these types of microphones, but I know that if I'm having this conversation with somebody, a gap question might be, well, does it have USB capability and can I plug it into the computer? And that could potentially be something that would stop my prospect from buying the microphone. And so that's a type of question that I want to be aware of as I'm communicating with them. If I was a personal trainer and I was talking to somebody about my workout regimen and explaining to them how this workout regimen is going to help them lose 15 pounds in the next 30 days. And I know that one of the questions that they're going to have is, does this involve calorie restriction? Am I going to have to watch how many calories I take in every day? And I know that part of my regimen involves calorie counting. Well, I want to be prepared for that question so that I can answer that question in the best way possible. And the best way possible to answer that question is to tie it to the overall benefit that I'm promising them. Now, this works for a multitude of reasons, because number one, when you do this, you are already overcoming the objection before the prospect presents it to you. And so what that does is, number one, it eliminates this time for you to get into like this combative type of exchange where they're posing the question or they're posing the objection, and then you have to now overcome that objection or counter that point of view. When you present this question throughout your overall dialogue with them, it subtly starts to break down those objections and answer those questions so that they become less of an obstacle later on in the communication cycle. The second thing that this does on a subconscious level is it makes the listener feel like you really understand them. You see, people do business with and people are influenced and persuaded by people that they like and people that they feel they are similar to. And so when you start answering questions that the prospect has in their mind before they even ask the question, it makes them feel like you understand them on a deep level. And that in turn makes them feel like you and them are alike. People do business with and are persuaded by people that they like and people that they feel they are like. And so this is going to reinforce that rapport that you are building with the other person when you communicate with them. Now, the more of these gap questions or objections you can know in advance before having the conversation with someone, the better. Because again, the more of these you can build into your presentation, the less you're going to have to deal with them later. And the double payoff is that the more you do it, the more the listener is going to feel like you really understand them on a deep level. So how do you do this? There are a multitude of ways that you can present this. The easiest way to present it is you might be wondering if, or you could say something like, when I talk to most people about this, this is what they think. Okay, those are the two best ways that I found to kind of introduce it. What's not as important, how you introduce it isn't really as important as what you do after you introduce it. So here's what I want you to understand. When it comes to influence, persuasion, and human communication, you as the presenter, you want to be crystal clear on the outcome that you want. So what is the outcome that you are hoping to get from this interaction? Are you trying to help form a belief, an opinion, an outlook? Are you trying to get a sale? Like you're trying to influence them to make a decision, to do something, whatever it may be. Once you're crystal clear on that outcome, so let's say the outcome that I'm looking for is I want them to have a belief about something. And let's say that belief that I want them to have is that my client attraction system is the best system for them to use to attract new clients without using cold outreach, DMs, or hounding people, right? Let's just say that's the belief that I want them to have. And I know that throughout my presentation, they're going to have certain gap questions or objections about that belief. Well, what I would say is something like, look, you might think, a lot of people ask me, does this involve cold outreach? Like where I'm just DMing people that I don't know in order to try to attract them as a client. And the good news is, no, this does not involve any cold outreach, so you don't have to worry about that. So that's a positive because you've overcome that objection. You've let them know that you understand them on a deep level. And what's great is that it truly is a benefit because it doesn't involve the thing that they don't want to do. But what do you do in a situation where the question that they have or the objection that they have does revolve around something that is included in what you're presenting to them that they do not find desirable? So going back to the personal trainer example before, let's say my methodology for helping somebody lose 10 pounds in the next 30 days does involve calorie restriction, and they don't like calorie restriction. So what I would need to do is reframe the way that they are thinking about calorie restriction. So the first thing I would want to understand is, what is it about calorie restriction that they don't like? So for some people, what they don't like about calorie restriction is they feel like they're depriving themselves of food and they feel like they're going to be hungry. Other people, what they don't like about calorie restriction is just the whole point of tracking the calories. Like, it's not so much about the fact that they're going to miss out. It's that, like, they just don't want to be bothered with having to count the calories and track them. So I would want to be clear on what the exact reason is for the objection. So let's take person number one, where they feel like they are going to be deprived if they are reducing their calorie intake. So what I would say is something like this. Hey, like, when I talk to people about this, one of the first questions that they have is like, is this going to involve calorie restriction? And so what I want to say to you first is that I don't want you to think about it as calorie restriction. I want you to think about it as calorie recalibration, meaning we're going to transform the calories that you're taking in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to operate on 2,000 calories, but you're going to be intaking foods that are going to cause you to be satiated and you're never going to be hungry. So you're never going to really feel like you're being deprived of anything. And the payoff is that when we're in this 2,000 calorie range, it's going to be much easier for you to lose weight. In fact, you'll probably wind up losing 2 to 3 pounds in the first week, right? I'm just giving an example. But what I'm doing is I'm reframing the way that they're thinking about calorie restriction, and then I'm tying it to a benefit. Now, let's take the second example, a person who just doesn't want to be bothered with counting calories. What I would say is something like, hey, when I talk to people about this, one of the first things they say is like, am I going to have to count these calories? And yes, you are going to have to track your calories, but you don't have to count them because I'm going to give you access to an app that's going to do everything for you. All you got to do is download the app, scan the food that you're about to eat. It's going to tell you how many calories are in it. You're going to put it in from the beginning, how many calories you want to intake for that day. And it's going to let you know how many calories are in this thing you're going to eat. Or you could pre-program it for how many calories you want to intake for the day and then put in all the foods that you plan on eating, and it's going to let you know whether you're in range or not. So now I've taken them out of the equation. I've removed the thing that they don't want to do. So again, guys, this works really well because ultimately when you're trying to influence or persuade somebody to do something, you're going to encounter resistance. It's just a natural part of this communication cycle. You're going to encounter gap questions. You're going to encounter objections. And the more equipped you are to overcome those things without getting into a combative situation, the better. So like I said, this comes from my book, The Black Book of Hypnotic Language Patterns. There's a link in the description if you want to go check it out. If you enjoyed this video, give me a thumbs up. I'd love to hear your feedback, your comments. Have you tried this? Have you not tried it? What do you think about it? And again, if you like this type of content, go ahead, consider subscribing and hit that bell notification so you get updated when I release more videos like this.